Good evening and welcome to Gibson's Bookstore Remote. I'm Elizabeth, the events coordinator at Gibson's Bookstore. We are bringing you an event this evening with Mona Awad, who has just recently had her best-selling book, Bunny, released in paperback. And if any of you have been into Gibson's Bookstore within the last year, if you have stepped within a few feet of Kelso, she has probably told you about this book, which she loved. She absolutely adored this book. We thought it would be wonderful, therefore, if she would be the one to be in conversation with Mona. And so they're discussing this deliciously creepy book, Bunny, which, by the way, again, paperback copies and hardcover actually are available from Gibson's Bookstore. We do have signed book plates available. Mona is holding on to some of them in case you wanted a personalized book plate. She'll pop those in the mail in the morning. If you order a personalized book plate with your book tonight, we can absolutely do that for you. We're tossing a link into the chat bar for you so that if you want to click on that and order a copy of the book, you can do that. But on that note, please join me in welcoming Mona and Kelso. Ladies, take it away.
Hi, everybody. Mona, would you like to start us off by reading a passage out of your fabulous, wonderful novel?
Yes, sure. I'd be happy to. So happy to be talking with you guys. Thank you so much for hosting me. It's such a pleasure. So I'm going to be reading just like the first page and change of the book, just to give you a taste. And just to give some context, Bunny is a novel that's set in New England. It's a campus novel, and it's about a clique of female graduate students who call each other Bunny, and they move and speak as one. And the story is told from the perspective of an outsider student named Samantha. And Samantha hates the bunnies, but she gets sucked into their clique in spite of herself. And as it turns out, the bunnies are doing something very dark and magical and weird off campus, and bunnies are involved. And that's all I'll say for now, and I'll just start by reading. So it starts at a college party in September, and Samantha is looking at the bunnies from a distance, and she's feeling all the feelings. We call them bunnies because that is what they call each other. Seriously, Bunny. Example. Hi, Bunny. Hi, Bunny. What did you do last night, Bunny? I hung out with you, Bunny. Remember, Bunny? That's right, Bunny. You hung out with me, and it was the best time I ever had. Bunny, I love you. I love you, Bunny. And then they hug each other so hard, I think their chests are going to implode. I would even secretly hope for it from where I sat, stood, leaned in the opposite corner of the lecture hall, department lounge, auditorium, bearing witness to 4 grown women, my academic peers, cooingly strangle each other hello, or goodbye, or just because you're so amazing, Bunny. How fiercely they gripped each other's pink and white bodies, forming a hot little circle of such rib-crushing love and understanding it took my breath away. And then the nuzzling of ski-jump noses, peach-fuzzy cheeks, temples pressed against temples in a way that made me think of the labial rubbing of the bonobo or the telepathy of beautiful, murderous children in horror films. All 8 of their eyes shut tight as if this collective asphyxiation were a kind of religious bliss. All 4 of their glossy mouths making squealing sounds of monstrous love that hurt my face. I love you, Bunny. I quietly prayed for the hug implosion all year last year, that their ardent squeezing might cause the flesh to ooze from the sleeves, neck holes, and A-line hems of their cupcake dresses like so much inane frosting. That they would get tangled in each other's Game of Thrones hair, choked by the ornate braids they were forever braiding into each other's heart-shaped little heads, that they would choke on each other's blandly grassy perfume. Never happened, not once. They always came apart from these embraces, intact and unwounded, despite the ill will that poured forth from my staring eyes like so much comic book villain venom. Smiling at one another, swinging clasped hands, skins aglow with affection and belonging as though they'd just been hydrated by the purest of mountain streams. Bunny, I love you. Completely immune to the disdain of their fellow graduate student me, Samantha Heather Mackey, who is not a bunny, who will never be a bunny. And I'll stop there.
Thank you for reading that.
Yeah.
Wonderful passage. It feels like high school all over again now. In regards to that passage, we can definitely tell that Samantha is kind of this nerdy or loser outsider in this book, but she also kind of fluctuates between being this just another outsider who desperately wants to be in this clique, and also wanting to be like the cool outsider as well. You get this kind of alternative vibe from her through this MFA program that she's in. And it feels like Samantha is jealous of the bunnies, but also later on in this book, the bunnies are pretty jealous of something that Samantha might have as well. That's why they kind of try to pull her into the clique. How did this kind of pulling back and forth between what Sam wants from the bunnies and what the bunnies want from Sam kind of shape this novel in general?
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially about that conflict, right? She despises them, you know, because they've excluded her. And they've excluded her for probably a few different reasons that she doesn't quite understand. But I think it has to do with, you know, I mean, it's actually kind of mysterious in a way. Like, I tried to keep it ambiguous why she's alienated, you know? Why do these girls kind of glom together and she's on the outside? But they do have their reasons. And she, you know, doesn't like them, but she wants to be accepted by them anyway. It's just that kind of classic thing where it's like, you're kind of caught between choosing between your authentic self, right? And then wanting to be accepted by people whom, well, you don't even like, but they have more power. They seem to be having a good time with each other. And for whatever reason, they don't like you. So you want them to like you. You want them to embrace you. So there's that ambivalence and that conflict is going on throughout the book. And it's definitely tied to her creative journey as well, because she's a writer. She's, you know, she's a creative person. And the conflict is magnified by that too, by her imagination, because a lot of her outsiderness is kind of being generated in her own head. At least it's being magnified there, right? You know, and that's kind of reinforcing the sense of how excluded she is from them, and probably keeping them at a distance from her too. So that was really fun to play with. To what degree is her imagination kind of creating the war, as opposed to like how, like the actual war that's happening between Samantha and the bunnies, right?
Right. And further along in the novel, she kind of starts connecting with them more and more through the MFA program, through their workshops. And eventually she starts going into their, what the bunnies call a smut salon, where it's kind of like the offshoot or the workshop MFA after hours.
Right.
And, but the first time that Sam goes to this smut salon, they start to, like, at least what I've picked up is they start to kind of feed her items and things. And then right after the beginning of the smut salon, she kind of falls further and further down into this path. And there were passages that I would read further along in the book where in one scene, she's with Jonah, who is another outside character from her MFA class. And she was trying to find her friend Ava, and she's going to like the bus station, to a diner, to another place. And Jonah thought that she was looking for drugs. And it really connected with me through the beginning of the story when she goes to the smut salon, where she starts eating things that they kind of give her.
Yeah.
And they start doing like these, they go to Pinkberry and eat tiny little things for their tiny little bodies.
Yeah.
I was really curious to know how much of the bananas things that start happening in this novel, because one of the things I like talking about this novel, it's like Alice in Wonderland on acid.
Exactly. I mean, it's like one side will make you grow shorter and the other side will make you grow taller, or vice versa, right?
Right.
Definitely the eating that you picked up on that happens in that trial in the smut salon, that is definitely the beginning of the slip down the rabbit hole, and those like the mini foods and all of those strange little cocktails that they drink and stuff. That's really playing on the Alice in Wonderland kind of journey, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, what you have a lot of pop culture references and fairy tales, like just galore throughout this book, all kinds of references in this book. What pop culture or fables that you pulled from that you enjoyed while writing this book? I get a lot of Heathers, things like that, Mean Girls and whatnot.
Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely Heathers, for sure. Mean Girls, absolutely. Love Mean Girls. The Craft was another one. Pretty in Pink. Jawbreaker. I don't know if you've ever seen that one. It's this like early 90s kind of horror, bubblegum horror, really. But I love those so much. So yeah, it's that kind of classic sort of clique versus outsider kind of story that I've always loved, just because I'm just so curious about what makes people feel like they don't belong. And then how do those group dynamics form? And then why are they so horrific? Like why did they become such horrific, disorienting spaces where you lose yourself? And I've just been so curious about why it is that some groups tend to, when they form like that, they have this power. And it's just so interesting to me. It's so strange and it's so dark. So Heather's is kind of like is one of those groups, right? All the girls named Heather have this power. And then in The Craft, it's the same. Once they lure, I forget what the outsider girl's name is, but she's great. When they lure her in, suddenly they're a coven, right? Or they were before, but now they're an even stronger one because she's like this special witch. So The Craft was really special for me in writing Bunny. I love those stories, and it felt right for this kind of story too. This is a very kind of fish out of water, going to this strange place, learning this occult thing, how to be creative successfully. So that kind of clique versus outsider dynamic felt really right for this setting. And then the other, big influence was fairy tale. I've always loved fairy tale. I studied fairy tale before I did an MFA. I went to Edinburgh for a year and I studied and got a master's. Just kind of, my dissertation was actually on the role of fear in the fairy tale. I read all these different kinds of fairy tales and looked kind of closely at how fear works in them. And it was really just an excuse to read a bunch of fairy tales, if I'm being totally honest. But there's my favorite kind of fairy tale is the Beauty and the Beasts, because there's more Beauty and the Beasts than there are any other kind of fairy tale. It's the most prevalent kind of story across the world, is that transformation. It's more prevalent than you would even think. Like I would definitely classify The Little Mermaid as a Beauty and the Beast story, and so The Hare's Bride is a fairy tale by the Brothers Grimm that features a rabbit as an animal bridegroom. And he's this like creepy rabbit who like is obsessed with this girl and chases her. And it actually ends in a really sad and kind of mysterious way that I really love. And so I definitely played with that in Bunny, obviously. That was a fun one. But I love the way fear works in fairy tales. And I love the way too that fear is so bound up in desire. So close together. The beast is also the prince. It's like they're so close, and it's a terrifying experience. But it's also like your possible dream come true is just behind that surface. So that beastly surface. So I really wanted to explore that. And so that's really throughout Bunny, those transformations, those animal to man, animal to human transformations.
Wonderful. Do you mind reading another passage out of your book?
Yeah. Okay. So I'll let the cat out of the bag, and I'll say that this is not really a spoiler. I've been saying this, pretty openly. This paperback is out now. So So but what the bunnies are doing off campus is they are conjuring men out of bunnies. So I already kind of hinted at that with the fairy tale stuff and the Beauty and the Beast. So they are literally conjuring men out of actual bunnies. And these men are missing some parts, and these men are malformed. They're handsome, but they're malformed. And so Samantha, at this point in the book, she's been sucked in, and she is now part of this bunny boy making cult. And so the story is kind of being told from the perspective of all of them. Okay. We huddle hug on the velvety green among the cherry blossom trees. We link arms. We close our eyes the better to feel each other's bodies. We form a hot little circle of love and understanding. We press our faces into our faces, our cheeks against our cheeks, our eyelashes tickling our skins like little hummingbird wings, like bunny nose twitches. Oh, Bunny, I love you. I love you, Bunny. We cannot say how long we have been here hugging like this, because it is that time of day where we thank each other for breathing. Post-workshop hug time. A hug to take away all of our owies. The ones that come with sharing your story, aka soul, in a classroom setting. Though today, we really don't need one. We were so brilliant in the cave today. We were such bright, shining lights. We were so the daughters of Wolf. You should have seen us. In fact, halfway through the class, we had to put on sunglasses to shield our eyes from how bright our stars were. We told each other, Bunny, you are so brilliant. You are so famous and waiting. Can we have your autograph now, please? The poets, aka the reptile people, pass us huddle hugging on the green. They are getting out of their own workshop with their professor, Silky, who wants to have sex with us so badly and has made this known in so many silky, nonverbal ways. The poets are on their way to get beer in the basement bar across the street, which smells of stale kegs and fake cheese. They stare at us with judgy eyes as they pass, grunting nobly in their fake poor clothes. They think we are such stupid girls. Fuck you, poets. You think you are so smart, so cool with your word art? You have no idea. Can you conjure hybrid spaces? Can you perform the body and have the body perform, literally? Can you make a Viking masseuse, a pre-TB Keats, a talkie Tim Riggins? Can you make a bunny explode with the combined force of your 8 eyes? 10, Bunny, your eyes too. It is so amazing to see the bunny explode, by the way. We are barely even grossed out anymore. Now we light a cigarette with the guts still in our hair, and we lean against Bunny's bloody shoulder, and we wait for the knock on the door. It is so amazing when we hear the knock-knock sound. It is so amazing to see a boy of flesh smiling at us where a bunny used to be. Hello, Samantha, he'll say. Tell me everything. Not a boy, Bunny, remember, a hybrid or a darling or a draft. We keep telling you. It makes us feel a little like God. No, we can't go that far. In fact, we are a little fearful of God if he's out there. She, Bunny, if she's out there. Or it. We like to think of it more as an energy. And don't worry, it would approve, so approve of us. Because look at what we just did. Look at him. So what if they all look the same? Like Cape Cod in boy form. Sometimes like the classic film stars or fairy tale princes of yesteryear. So what if they all say the same things? Tell me everything. Your beauty is like screaming, like Proust, like a Frenchy film complete with soundtrack. You're a daughter of Wolf. So what if anatomically there are some things missing? Essential things like hands, genitals, an untwisted mouth, possibly a soul. Still, it's a good start. We'll get better. In the meantime, look, he is holding an orchid just for us, which, if we take it from him quickly, he won't eat first. He is brushing our hair, doing it so tenderly. He doesn't mean to wrap the brush handle against our scalp at all. He is painting strange flowers and blobby birds on our fingernails. He is saying we are so beautiful and wild like the black moors of the Brontes. He is saying our talents are as deep as the North Sea. He is saying, love your dress. He is saying, Pinkberry, would you like some? He is helping us in the kitchen to make light and sunnies and lady gray tea. And so what if he is more trouble than he is help? So what if he cries when we say, will you fuck us? So what if he explodes when we say, tell me something about you? It's amazing what it promises. We're not bored in the slightest, ever, ever. We're blown away. I'll stop there.
I feel it's definitely like college for me. It's just another day. No, joking.
That's right.
Okay, just trying to make light of something very dark. Yeah.
You and I had very different college experiences, Kelso, I
Right.
think.
Mm-hmm.
But look at me. I mean, come on now. That's just a normal day for me. No, it's fine. So as we can probably tell, the bunny men or the drafts or the darlings, what have you, whatever you'd like to call them, they feel like nothing more than kind of these fetishized objects or like lap dogs. They don't have any, they're just there to be looked at, to be admired for their bodies. They're there to only give them endless compliments, to brush their hair. But the main reason why the bunnies, the cult, as it were, the only reason why they wanted to have these bunny boyfriends or these bunny objects is to have sexual gratification out of them. And I think it's really funny to see the juxtaposition between these bunnies that are just there for show, to if you ask them like their opinion on something, or if you ask them to have sex with them, they explode, or like they cry, or they bite, or they can't figure out what to do.
They're wild.
Yeah, they're these wild animals, and there's also in this book, especially in the last two passages you read, the bunnies are always forming very tight circles. They like to hug, and they like not just hugging like gentle hugging, it's this squeezing of each other. And it's almost kind of sensual in a way, the way they talk and they touch each other. But you never give the bunnies any type of like gratification in that way, that sensual gratification. Was this your intention when you wrote this book? Like, why are you denying these women the sexual gratification from this book, I guess is my question,
Right. They can't get it. They're not able to. They are lacking in that talent. The problem is that they want to control the situation too much. And when you want to control something, it can't give you those things. Can't give you that kind, even though they want it. They can't get it because what they also want, as much as they want that desire, that gratification, that fear and desire thing, that you can get from like a companion, from a work of art, because really that's what the bunny men are. They're suitors, but they're also a metaphor for creative output, right? But they don't have, they're not alive enough in that way to do the thing that the bunnies want, which is why they enlist Samantha in part. They think she has some kind of access, because they think she's like poor, she's lived more or something. She has this access to grit that they don't have. So they also suspect, and they're probably right about this, that she's not in control. So that when she creates, the things that she will create will not be pets that are kind of a little bit wild and that bite back, but that will actually have wills of their own and really be something to dance with, because she can't draw lines, she can't control. So no, it was a very it was a thing that I had to deny them that because of the way they went about creating.
What is the role of mental illness, or at least in Samantha's case, her possible allusion to mental illness, especially with towards the end of the book, while you're still going into this acid trip rabbit hole, as it were. What is her mental illness like, if she even has one, especially for things that she cannot control when she creates?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of allusions to it in the book. She can't, it's very, very clear that for one thing, she lives very deeply in her head. And her imagination is really informing her experience of the outside world. It's informing her experience of the bunnies. It's informing her experience of their intimacy. She kind of experiences it as violent, and I think part of the reason why she experiences it as violent, their bond, is because she's outside of it, right? So in her imagination, it takes on a kind of horrific aspect that maybe it wouldn't have if she was inside of it, although I don't know about that, but her imagination is definitely coloring things, let's say that. And it's very true that she is a character that we can't trust. She's not a reliable narrator. And she can't draw lines between the real and the imagined as easily as the bunnies can. And they use that to their advantage. And they kind of suggest to her that she might be ill. And I think that reading is available. That reading is available. And I think I made it available intentionally because I do think that it's a dangerous road to take when you're playing with creativity. When you really get inside, and I really got inside this book. I got lost in this book, deeply lost in a beautiful way, but in a way that often scared me. And so I felt that it was important to kind of show just how there was no line for this person, because there was often no line for me. And that's how I really, I really get, when I'm deeply in a story, that's often all I see. I'm so deeply in that world that when I'm in this world, I'm not as present. And so I wanted to play with that, with that idea that it can lead you to some scary places in your mind, and that ability to kind of spin dark stories. It's a gift of the imagination, but it can also be a curse. Her imagination also gives her a lot of wonderful things. It gives her the opportunity to dream, to escape, to create consolation for herself, to create companionship for herself. And those are all wonderful things. But it also torments her. And I you have to be able to make the argument, I think, that, I don't know how healthy that is for her, because she's still not in control of it. Right?
Right.
Yeah.
So with regards to you falling into this book when you were writing it, I read an article that it took you about 3 months to write the first draft of this book.
Mm-hmm.
When you were writing this book, did it kind of just did you wake up one day and it fell out of you? Were there certain scenes or parts where you had to kind of drag some of these characters out of you? How was that writing process, especially those first 3 months for you?
I have to be honest and say, it's not always like this. I have to preface and say that it's not, but this book did kind of really, it was a joy, it was a scary joy, but it did not, the first draft did not come with difficulty. It was pretty organic, even though I didn't know necessarily where it was going to end. I knew only one thing about the ending, and that was it. And it was enough to kind of lead me through it. So it was really joyous, but frightening too, because it was entering territory that I never really entered. It was going into the surreal. It was drawing from horror. It was drawing from fairy tale. My previous book doesn't really do any of that. There's some similarities. It's another outsider narrative, and it deals with relationships between women and things like that, and marginal versus privileged groups. But this descent into the surreal was, I didn't know if I would come out again on the other side. But I did. I think in part because I accepted that I didn't know, and that acceptance of not knowing allowed me, I don't know, I could not know for this book from one scene to the next, and it was great, Later came the difficulty with the second revision. That took over a year, because I was layering in all the details and, making sure that things added up, and putting signposts in for the reader and all that kind of fun stuff, But yeah, no, the first draft was kind of a dream. It really was.
A dream that thankfully you could control.
Yeah. Thank God, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's the single difference. Yeah.
I mean, fiction is the ultimate form of memoir, if you really think about it. I believe you had said that actually in an article. And I just love that quote. Fiction is the ultimate form of memoir, because it's true, especially with you creating this book and you're just kind of pulling it out of you. With regards to, speaking of fiction kind of mirroring real life, what were experiences out of your own personal life that you were free to share with the rest of the class, that you pulled out of this book, especially because you have gone to an MFA program, especially when you were older. You didn't start when you were in your 20s, I'm assuming. So especially with these college writing courses, because I've considered going to an MFA class, and after reading this, I have no desire to do that anymore. So what are your experiences that you pulled personally through your life to get through this book?
Yeah, I'm glad I went when I was older, I'll be honest, just because I knew who I was and I already had my project kind of decided. I came in with 13 Ways of Looking at a Fat Girl and I left with it complete. So I feel good about that because workshop is intense. It's intense. I mean, when I did my MFA, and my colleagues were wonderful. They were not axe wielding girls, I promise. But it is disorienting. It is strange. It is asking you to be two things at the same time: deeply creative and deeply vulnerable with people that you just met. And there's a lot of room to become competitive, petty, paranoid, anxious, uncertain, second guess the whole project. Somebody could say something really well-meaning, and then if you're in a mood or you're not feeling good about your work, or you're just at this really weird moment in your process, that could just undo it. When you're young, and when you're or even when you're not young, when you're just feeling vulnerable about your work and you're just starting something new, it's very easy to kind of get paralyzed, right? Just begin to second guess it. I mean, it's a castle you're making out of air. How easy is it for somebody to crush a castle made out of air? Just do it like this, right? So that's kind of why when I went, I thought it would be great fodder for a horror novel. A bunch of creative people getting together and kind of talking about their work every week. And it's funny too, because people are funny, and like when they read your work, you can't help but feel that they're reading you. People do that all the time anyway when they're just talking to each other. We're always reading each other in these ways, and that's always interested me. That's in 13 Ways too. I love how what we say, it reveals just so much, right? There's a lot of other things that we're not saying that we're also saying when we say what we say. So I played with that in Bunny. And I drew on those dynamics. And, my experience, I was very fortunate. I went to a funded program. But these programs, they're expensive, and they're often for people who just have the means, or worse, they don't have the means and they've taken out all these loans, and there's such high stakes, and then there's no guarantees. So perfect fodder for a horror novel, really. Yes. But I would, if I was giving advice to somebody, I might say, if you can do it and be funded, then I think it's good, as long as you're able to create some distance between you and other people, and just always have a kind of a handle on yourself and on your work, and just believe in it, because I do think you need that to some degree going into these programs, just to protect yourself. I think it can be really, really great. It just depends on where you are in your writing. And what kind of program it is. That's really relative. But yeah, it's total fodder for horror and satire. It's just asking for somebody to make fun of it, especially the very experimental kind of I went to a program that was really experimental, and that was good for me. It pushed me, but I can't help but laugh at that too. I think it's funny. The experimental. So one of the bunnies is a really experimental writer, and she writes promes.
I love that so much.
Yeah.
She writes on glass.
Writes on glass.
What?
Yeah, with like a diamond shape, like a dagger shaped diamond. She writes on glass. Her poems. Yeah.
To take this opportunity to remind everybody that we do have books available for purchase at Gibson's Bookstore, and Mona is personalizing signed book plates for inclusion with your orders. If you order with us tonight, she'll be shipping those out to us tomorrow. If anybody has any questions, we have about 15-20 minutes. So if anybody has any questions, now is the time to type those into the chat bar, which we were discussing before the event. We're never certain which side that's going to appear on our screen. So go ahead and type that in. It's on, yes, see, it's very backwards. So while we are waiting for a couple questions to come in, Kelso, did you have any more that you wanted to lob Mona's way?
Oh yeah, we could go all night if I wanted to, and poor Mona doesn't want to hear me chatter and stumble across Chris Farley show style. So let's see, what's your favorite horror movie and why?
I love Suspiria.
Oh yeah, sorry.
It's a great one. No, I love it. I love the colors. In fact, the colors, Bunny came out in Italy just the other month. And they were so great. They even did this here. I'll show you guys. Let me see. Somebody for this Italian designer did this ink drawing that comes with the book. Isn't that pretty?
Yeah.
Beautiful. I think it's like alone in a tree or something. But yeah, I guess I love Suspiria because of the colors and the kind of that contrast between dark and light in the movie. That really inspired Bunny, because I loved splashing the horror with all this like pink, like kind of cutesy kind of adorableness that I personally find terrifying. I find adorableness terrifying, even as I'm drawn to it, because it has so much power to seduce me. So hence Bunny. Like bunnies are horrible, but they're also, they're really culturally charged and kind of like in a lot of dark ways in our Western culture too. So that was really fun to play with. And Suspiria is just perfect for that. Also, it's about an outsider going to this weird school, and so many gothic elements to it. So yeah, I love Suspiria.
That was a great movie.
It's so good.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to fangirl about that either. So if you could be any one of the bunnies, which one would you be and why?
Oh man, that's really hard, because I have to say I love them all. I love all the bunnies. I mean, Samantha does too, right? Even in that first page, it's very clear that she's drawn to them. She's probably attracted to them as well. Yeah, they're all cool. They're all great villains. But the Duchess is probably my favorite. Yeah, I would probably be the Duchess, because she's the most emotionally manipulative, and she's got the cool silver hair, and she's got this power. Although I guess it would be fun in some ways to be Cupcake, just because I like the way that she dresses. I would probably dress that way, ironically, like a little. I would kind of goth it up a bit, but I do like Cupcake style of dress. She dresses like a cupcake, so she wears like a lot of vintage dresses and pearls and things. She dyes her hair purple at the end, like a pale purple, like pale purple icing. Yeah,
almost like a lavender, and she's always got it up, like this perfect 1950s housewife almost.
Yes.
Yeah. I think I would be Victoria.
Nice.
Honestly, I mean, I already have that. It's funny because I feel like Victoria, because Eleanor, the goddess, I feel like she's the head of them all.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
She's kind of one of those. They all are friends, but she kind of runs the show. Yes. Victoria, she's very gritty. With the exception of Sam, she's very much like when are we gonna fuck the bunnies type of thing. She's very crass, which is very juxtaposed with the rest of the bunnies.
Yes.
Plus, I believe that you wrote in the book that Victoria is from New Hampshire. She's had written poems in New Hampshire. It's like, hey, reference. So.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. And she wears combat boots, and she's kind of got, she's the provocative, kind of like aggressive one.
Mhm.
And I do like that she says things that none of the other bunnies would say, because they're kind of prim, like they're a little prim, they're a little
Yeah.
princessy. Yeah, it's true.
So the bunny was opted to be a TV series. How do you feel about that? Are you excited? Are you kind of?
It's weird because I mean it's funny that you say that, because it is weird, isn't it? Like I don't often watch adaptations of things if I love a book, because I just can't bear it. I can't bear to see. I just can't. I can't do it. But I love the writer who took it on. She's a really cool playwright. Her name is Megan Moston Brown, and I read her pilot, and I think it's really cool. I think she and I have very similar sensibilities, so she got it, you know. And she added some really interesting things, because if it does get made, and there's a pretty good chance of that right now. It's going to be several seasons. So she had to put in some stuff to make it kind of go past the single year.
Yeah.
Because the book takes place in one academic year, fall to spring. But she wrote in some things that will make it kind of go beyond that. And there are some things, right? I mean, the bunny boys, they run away. There are bunny boys all over, you know, this town that is Providence. You know, like that. That's a reveal. It's not a reveal. It's Providence, very obviously. So yeah, so I think there's definitely stuff to do, right? There are like those decapitators and
Oh,
stuff.
yeah.
So she made some more of that. So I think it'll be really cool. I'm actually excited, and if it gets made, I will watch it.
I will watch it too, and I'm not usually a TV watching kind of gal.
Yeah, see, we're the same. Yeah.
Yeah, I just, I don't mind watching a good movie. I'm not, I'm
Right.
just not a TV watcher usually. What was your favorite scene to write? Because there are plenty of scenes that I loved to read, but I'm wondering what a good scene that you really liked writing.
Yeah, I loved writing the prom. I loved it so much. So there's a prom that Samantha gets invited to by the bunnies, and it's kind of like a bit of a play on Carrie, which is another horror movie that I love. I'm actually wearing a Carrie necklace right now. But yeah, so the prom was really fun, because it does kind of turn very dark. And it's funny because they're women in their 20s and they're holding a prom just because they like prom. So that's very dark in itself, like this desire to kind of like still be in high school. So that was super fun. And then the other thing that I really enjoyed writing, I have to say, is I loved writing the we section. Like it goes on for a bit where she's in the bunny world. Samantha's in the bunny world, and the whole thing is told in that bunny voice.
Mm-hmm.
That was fun. That was actually, I really enjoyed the bunnies. I love a good villain. So it was really fun to occupy their headspace and be in it. Yeah. What about you? What was your favorite?
Oh man, there are so many. I love when they are all walking around downtown and they go to this one shop and they're trying to figure out they're trying to figure out their next smut salon, and Samantha just gets pulled more and more kind of deeper and deeper into the cult, and then she starts walking, she sees something in the alleyway, and then she starts walking towards it and then immediately gets grabbed from
Yes.
behind.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
you leave it on that cliffhanger.
Yeah.
And the other bunnies are trying to look for her.
Yeah.
I really liked that. I also really liked the scenes with her and Jonah. I really liked Jonah.
I love Jonah too. Jonah was fun to write. He's a poet. He's like kind of her social equivalent, but in the
Right.
poet world. He's like the nerdy outsider loser in the poet world.
Right. And he comes up and starts talking to her, and the bunnies kind of just leave her there.
Yeah.
And she is trying to chase after them, and you had written this scene in there, and it said like, the face that the Duchess had made to her when she was driving away, it's not, to be a bitch bunny, it's because, you need to talk to this person.
Right.
I loved that scene. I could keep going with all of the scenes that I enjoyed, but I will spare you my fangirling.
Jonah too.
We actually have a question here from Katrina who says fairy tales are often have a message or a lesson. I know you said you're deeply inspired by fairy tales. Did you have any kind of lesson in mind when you were writing this?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's kind of a love letter to the imagination. It's really that's what this book is, more than anything else. It's a love letter to what the imagination can do. You know, it can be a transformative space, and that can go in two different directions. It can lead you down these incredibly like frightening roads, you know, down these kind of into these nightmare spaces, but it can also be this place where you find companionship, love, consolation. And it's a matter of trusting yourself too, which is ultimately what Samantha has to do at the end of this book. She has to trust herself. She has to choose that space, her space, her ground to stand on, and to have faith in it. So I think that's really what the book is kind of exploring, is that relationship, right? And that relationship too between loneliness and the imagination, how they feed each other, and how one can kind of like console the other. So I think that was kind of the main thrust of the book ultimately. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
One more question for you.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about your upcoming book that I'm really excited about?
Yeah, sure. So it's coming out next year, probably early fall, and it's called All's Well, and it's about a theater professor who, bless you, who suffers from chronic pain, and she's putting on this production of All's Well That Ends Well. So it's a bit of a play on All's Well That Ends Well. She's putting on this undergraduate production of All's Well That Ends Well, and her students are mutinous and they hate her, and they want to put on Macbeth, and she barely has a hold on them, and then she makes this kind of dark pact, and she gets to put on her play, but off stage she lives Macbeth. Yeah, so it was really fun to write. It's another kind of journey, you know. It's got elements of dark in there, and then there's also like humor, and you know, and it's a book that deals with pain. So it's a book that deals with chronic pain and with women's experiences of chronic pain, and the way that they can get discounted and not believed and things like that. So it was really good, and I've dealt with a lot of chronic pain in my life. So in a lot of ways, the book was really important for me to write too.
I have a question there. Is she Macbeth? If she's living Macbeth, or is she Lady Macbeth?
Oh, that's such a great question. I think she's a little bit of both, Elizabeth. Yeah, I think she's a little bit of both. She kind of plays both sides, but she is definitely the tragic hero. There's no question about that. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I really can't wait to read that, because I'm actually, one of the things I've been wanting to do in quarantine was to read classics that I had missed growing up. You know, I didn't read any Shakespeare, and so there is a lot out there that is based off of his work. And so I didn't know where to start, and I started with Macbeth. And you know, I was talking to another coworker of mine who's actually watching right now. Hi, Joe. Joe and I have been playing off of different adaptations, especially Macbeth. So I'm very excited to read your version of Macbeth, and especially the role of chronic illness in women. Yeah, that's important.
And I think so too. And it was so fun to write. I love that play as well. There's a great version if you're kind of wanting one to explore. If you haven't seen it, there's one with Patrick Stewart and Kate Fleetwood. You can watch it on Amazon, and it's so good. The witches are nurses. It's really great. It's really, and Kate Fleetwood is the best Lady Macbeth I have ever seen. The best. So definitely worth checking out for sure.
Awesome. Thank you for your recommendation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On that bubble, toil, and trouble note, I think that's about all the time we have this evening. A final reminder that if you order a book tonight, or if you have ordered in the last few weeks a copy of Bunny, let us know if you'd like a personalized book plate from Gibson's. If you've ordered from us, and Mona will be personalizing book plates and popping them in the mail in the morning. So on that note, everybody, thank you very much for joining us. Kelso, thank you for being our in conversation partner, our expert, our resident expert on Bunny. And Mona, thank you very much for joining Gibson's. I'd love to have you in the store for your next book. Hopefully by then we can actually see people face to face. But for now, this is what we have. So thank you everybody joining us from your living rooms this evening. Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys. It was such a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Also, thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, everyone.